is Miss Jessie Jensen Case. She is a lecturer in nursing and midwifery at the University of Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. And she is a passionate about safe holistic midwifery care, supporting and promoting physiological birth, and exploring the social and cultural power dynamic within midwifery practice. Jessie has a professional and research interest in student support and the influence of healthcare providers' emotional well-being on the sustainable provision of women-centered maternity care. And she will present about Student Midwife Support Circle, connecting with ourselves, each other, and our profession. So let's welcome Jessie Jensen Case. Jessie, are you here?
Hello,
Okay,
thank you so much.
You are welcome. So I will give the remote control to you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today to share this work on the behalf of myself and the rest of my team, Associate Professor Terry Downer, Dr. Prudence Millier, and Dr. Jackie Holt. Sorry, I'm a bit too quick and impatient. I would like to begin today by acknowledging the sovereign custodians of the lands and waters on which I'm presenting from today, the Gubbi Gubbi Kabi Kabi people, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I would extend that respect to all First Nations people listening here today. So midwifery can be a highly rewarding and emotionally challenging profession. We know that the health and well-being of midwives is significantly influenced by a range of negative workplace stresses, including witnessing traumatic events, as well as broader organisational factors, such as an unsupportive and dysfunctional work environment. Student midwives experience their own unique set of stresses that can arise from personal, academic, and clinical influences. This can include transitioning from the university environment, their academic workload, and financial stress. And student midwives are also exposed to similar occupational stresses as registered midwives. Student midwives are also witnessing traumatic events during birth. They're observing disrespectful treatment, coercion, and abuse of mothers, and they themselves are experiencing systemic violence and bullying. And we know that these experiences can impact student midwives' health and well-being and can contribute to the development of secondary traumatic stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue. Student midwives who hold idealised views of midwifery may experience a theory-practice gap, and this mismatch between expectations and clinical experience, along with the exposure to traumatic clinical events and the resultant emotional distress, can result in early withdrawal from the midwifery profession. An additional emerging stressor for many student midwives is the reduced opportunity to develop meaningful social support and connectedness. And this can be due to the combination of online learning as well as time spent on clinical placements. And this also has implications in the development of a sense of belonging, which has been linked with student engagement, identity formation, and the fostering of emotional health and well-being in undergraduate health professional students. So the Student Midwife Support Circle concept is something that has been previously utilised as a strategy to promote retention and support for first-year undergraduate midwifery students at a different Australian university. Students in this study identified a range of different benefits from attending the support circles, including the development of enhanced peer connections, a sense of identity and belonging, increased self-confidence, and feelings of resilience. And so we know that support circles have been identified as a potential strategy to address many of these issues and stressors faced by midwifery students today. However, further research is needed to understand how they can enhance student midwife experiences. So what are Student Midwife Support Circles? Back in 2015, I was working in a role at my university where I was coordinating the continuity of care experiences. This is a requirement for all entry to practice midwifery students in Australia, where they need to follow a minimum of 10 pregnant women throughout the pregnancy, birth and postnatal period. I was regularly having conversations with students who were coming to me quite distressed by what they were seeing in the clinical area, the mismatch that they could see between their understanding of midwifery and what was happening in the clinical setting. And they often felt alone and isolated in this, and that maybe there was something wrong with them and their inability to be a midwife. So it was around this time that I came across the concept of the Student Midwife Support Circles from Jane Hardwick-Collins and Judy Mort. Jane and Judy are both Australian. Jane is a previous home birth midwife who is the founder of the School of Shamanic Womancraft. And Judy, at the time that she first implemented these circles, was working as a clinical facilitator in New South Wales, Australia, with the first cohort of direct entry midwifery students. So at the end of 2015, I started offering these circles as a regular event that were open to all of the midwifery students across all year levels as a voluntary co-curricular activity. So the 2-hour sessions are held on campus in a private and comfortable space with cushions and dim lighting. They're offered regularly, and over the years, this has varied between fortnightly and every second month based on the student needs and feedback. And activities within the session include things like the creation of a safe space with opportunities to transition from the outside world into the circle through guided meditation and mindfulness. And there are opportunities to share experiences through storytelling, non-judgmental listening, personal reflection, through focused conversation, craft, and writing activities. Each session has a set theme with a series of reflective prompts with clearly defined rules within the session around confidentiality, respect, and self-responsibility. The processes and practices that occur within the circles are explicitly presented to participants as both opportunities for personal and professional development and self-awareness, as well as being equally transferable to their developing midwifery practice. This is a space for them to learn the art of midwifery and holding space. So we thought after offering these for such a long time, we should probably evaluate the outcomes and see how the students perceived the circles that we offered. We'd had lots of positive feedback, but we wanted to capture this. So our aim was to explore the impact of support circles on student midwives' emotional wellbeing and sense of belonging to the midwifery profession. We used a mixed methods research approach using a concurrent triangulation design that comprised of both a cross-sectional survey and individual interviews. Data were collected via an anonymous electronic self-report survey, and interviews were conducted over Zoom. This approach allows for different but complementary data to be used to address the research questions, with the qualitative data used to validate or expand on quantitative results. The survey itself used a combination of closed and open-ended questions, and participants were eligible to participate if they were current midwifery students or had been a midwifery student at UniSC within the previous 7 years. Those participants who had also attended at least one circle were also invited to participate in semi-structured interviews. Demographic questions sought information regarding the participants' age, sex, their current situation. So, for example, were they current students, past students? Did they finish their degree? And if so, are they working as a midwife? Or did they not complete their degree? So they were also asked about their expectations of midwifery, their sense of belonging to the midwifery profession, and their attendance at, perceptions of, and experiences with the Student Midwife Support Circles. We used 2 validated instruments to measure emotional wellbeing. The first was the ProQual tool, which is the professional quality of life. It's a measure of compassion satisfaction, which is really a positive measure around helping behaviours. It also measures burnout and secondary traumatic stress. And the second validated tool we used was the generalised self-efficacy scale. In the open-ended questions, survey participants were asked to further expand on their responses regarding their expectations of midwifery, as well as answering questions around what they see as barriers and enablers to participating in the circles, whether or not they think that their attendance at circles had influenced their engagement, emotional well-being and sense of belonging, and anything else that they would like to share. So the interviews were semi-structured and, as I said, completed via Zoom, with participants prompted with a range of different questions, including, tell me about your experience of attending the circles, what skills or strategies have you developed, has this had any impact on your academic or clinical experience, and what parts of the circles do you believe is or was making a real difference? The quantitative data from the survey were downloaded from Qualtrics into a SPSS software package, and data was reported as descriptives and then analysed as independent samples t-tests to compare the effects of attendance at the circles, looking at none versus any attendance, and as correlational analysis of the variables of interest. The qualitative data from the interviews were transcribed verbatim and analysed in conjunction with the qualitative data that was taken from the open-ended questions in the survey, and we used Braun and Clark's thematic analysis to identify common themes and relationships and explore divergent experiences within and between the themes. So unfortunately, we didn't have huge numbers of participants, but we did have some interesting findings. So 31 participants responded to the survey and 3 participants agreed and were available to be interviewed. All survey participants were female, ranging in age from 18 to 54 years, with the majority in that 25 to 34 year age category. Approximately half the students that you can see here in orange were current midwifery students at our university. Approximately a quarter of them in green here were past students that either didn't finish their degree or did finish but are not currently working as midwives. And the remaining approximate quarter were past midwifery students that have finished their studies and are working as midwives. All interview participants were also female. 2 of them were currently enrolled as midwifery students, and the third has graduated and is working as a midwife. Interestingly, the majority of participants, when asked about their expectations of midwifery, reported that their experiences did not meet their expectations. We can see this here in the pie graph, where you can see 16% of participants in the orange reported that midwifery was a lot worse than they had expected. Another 42% that you can see here in the yellow said that midwifery was somewhat as they expected, and 22% reported that it was as expected. So their experience met their expectations. The remaining 20% reported that midwifery is either better than or so much better than they had expected it to be. Participants elaborated on their experiences via the open-ended questions that I mentioned previously, and 3 key themes were identified from the data: expectation versus reality, witnessing systemic violence, and interesting and important work, as you can see exemplified by the quotes on the slide here. So the first theme, expectations versus reality, really centred around the perceived mismatch between what's taught at university and the underpinning midwifery philosophy that is focused on woman-centred care, and the reality of hospital practice, which was perceived as more technically based and clinically focused. This theme also included the difficulties of navigating hospital policies, medical hierarchy and culture, and the perceived lack of support for woman-centred midwives. Learning more about maternity systems in place and how woman-centred care isn't always central upsets me, said one participant. The second theme, witnessing systemic violence, included exposure to traumatic, stressful situations, including the coercion and abuse of women during birth, and the apparent systemic nature of this within institutionalised maternity care. One participant expressed this by saying that It was about being a bystander to obstetric and midwifery assault and violence. They were not acknowledged and belittled by healthcare professionals, and them coercing women to make decisions that they don't want to make, and then telling women it's their responsibility for making choices that they were forced into. Conversely, participants that reported their expectations of midwifery were what they expected or better, reported higher levels of satisfaction with midwifery. And whilst acknowledging the potential challenges within the profession, these participants valued the dynamic nature of the work and the positive impact they can have on women. One participant said, "It's interesting, challenging, but empowering." So we were really interested in capturing the feelings that participants had around the circles, whether or not they'd attended any, to help understand how they perceived these as a voluntary co-curricular activity. So by co-curricular, I just mean that it's not a mandatory requirement. They come along as a part of their course. This is a voluntary, optional, additional support for the students. The results shown here in Table 1 show that the majority of participants either agreed or strongly agreed that the circles added considerably to student outcomes, increased student wellbeing, helped students manage stress while on placement, and helped to develop a sense of belonging to the midwifery profession. Additionally, the majority of participants also agreed or strongly agreed that it helps to have a known academic facilitate this debrief external to where they're doing their clinical placement, so outside of the clinical area, and that they felt safe to say things in the support group that they couldn't say whilst they were on clinical placement. So although these feelings about the circles were positive overall, we wanted to just dig a little bit deeper and see if there was any difference in response to these questions based on whether participants had actually attended any circles or not. Unsurprisingly, those participants who had attended one or more, so even just one circle that they had attended, were significantly more positive about the circles than those who had not attended any. And that kind of makes sense. If you've gone along and experienced it itself, you've got more of a strong idea about how it works. We've got here the mean, standard deviations and comparisons between the none and any session groups. And the results of the t-test showed a very significant difference between the groups, with any level of participation in the circles leading to much more positive views about all aspects of the circles, except for the format, where non-attenders felt that the format should change. So that was good feedback for us about, potential barriers there. The size of these effects are large to extremely large, indicating that attending the circles has led to substantial and meaningful changes in positive perceptions of the support groups and about midwifery. So we're really interested in participants' sense of belonging to the midwifery profession. Of the survey participants, about a third of them felt that absolutely midwifery is my profession. Another third said, "Oh, I suppose so, yes, midwifery is my profession," and the remaining third were neutral in response to this question. The associations for all participants between expectations of midwifery, so midwifery being what they thought it would be, how likely they thought they would still be working in midwifery within 10 years, and the outcomes were then explored with correlations that are shown here. When I say outcomes, I mean looking at those aspects from the ProQual survey that I talked about before. There were highly significant and positive correlations between midwifery being as expected, believing they would stay in the profession, and feeling like they belong to the profession, and with more positive outcomes of greater compassion satisfaction and self-efficacy, with less burnout and secondary traumatic stress. So the effect size, as the size of the correlation shows that these are all large effects, and this indicates that although some of these correlations did not reach significance, it's likely that in a similar and larger sample that the same associations would occur. So finally, the analysis explored the impact of attendance at the circles, whether there was an increase in the participants' general self-efficacy and compassion satisfaction, with lower levels of burnout and secondary traumatic stress. Independent samples, t-tests compared those who attended none against those who had attended any. And again, the mean standard deviations, t-test results with Cohen's d are shown here. Those who had attended any number of circles were significantly more likely to feel that the groups helped in their sense of the belonging to the profession, to believe that they would be working in midwifery in 10 years' time, and to have greater compassion satisfaction, meaning that they were more satisfied with the care that they were able to provide in their work. And these represent large to very large effect sizes, as shown by Cohen's d. Although not significant, any level of attendance showed a medium effect size for self-efficacy, a small effect for overall sense of belonging to the profession and for burnout, and are likely to represent meaningful and significant influences that would be found in larger samples. Interestingly, both groups, those that attended and didn't, were similar in their views of midwifery being as it expected to be. Both the survey and interview participants expanded on why they considered the circles helpful, and 3 themes emerged from the qualitative data around the benefits of the Student Midwife Support Circles: learning from each other, belonging to the midwifery sisterhood, and circle as sanctuary. So participants identified several benefits of attending the circles that facilitated students learning from each other. This included the vicarious experience of observing and listening to others in the circle and how these skills could be incorporated into their practice, as well as a validation of their own experiences and personal learning journey. They also highlighted the benefits of having the circles attended by students of various year levels, and that these benefits applied to students regardless of which point they were at in their studies. So it's interesting and to see how they talk about it and how they offload and debrief. So I've definitely gained a lot from listening to the other students as well. Well, it's a skill. You're learning by watching them, providing a space for you that you can now hopefully use. You're just observing and then transferring that into your practice. It's definitely given me like a broader perspective of other people's experiences and how women in our care would have different experiences. I guess it opens my mind a lot more to how other people think and feel and process things and how I can relate that into practice. The circles made us feel genuinely cared for and like our contributions were important. It enabled us as first years to learn from third years, and in third year to impart knowledge and wisdom to the first and second years. Student midwives are quite passionate people, but there's something really beautiful about a first year's passion. And I feel like sometimes the third years need to look at that and go, oh yeah, that's right. That's why I'm doing this. Belonging to the midwifery sisterhood was the second theme that emerged from the perceived benefits, where participants reported that attending the circles resulted in them feeling closer to their classmates, the development of a feeling of sisterhood and a sense of belonging to the midwifery profession. After just attending one student midwife support circle, I already felt closer to my classmates, and I left with a feeling of belonging to the midwifery profession. I think it is a fantastic resource that should be readily available. The circles bring a sense of belonging and sisterhood, said another participant. And just being seen and feeling like you're part of a community. It's like this is why you did midwifery in a way. You found your people. These are the people that you wanted to connect with, and you don't always get to do that. So I guess it's nearly like a little bit of grounding into true midwifery. Finally, participation in the Student Midwife Support Circles contributed to students' emotional well-being, where they identified the circle itself acting as a sanctuary, providing a safe space for them to explore personal, academic experiences, increase personal confidence, and develop supportive friendships. I think it improves your emotional well-being. I think you have an opportunity to sit with your feelings, allow them to be present, and sort of have a space to open up, and then sort of let it go. It gives you the opportunity to get rid of some of that emotional baggage and improve mental well-being. And then I feel lighter, better, and I can just sort of let that go as opposed to having that mental burden. One participant said, I will always be grateful for the kind, nurturing, non-judgmental and safe environment provided by the circles. It brought back a sense of spirituality and grace amongst a hectic study life, personal life, work life, and placement. I'll never forget, I had a student a number of years ago who had attended a few circles and didn't come for a while. And she came back to one. And at the opening introductions where we go around and share who we are and where we're at in our midwifery journey, something that might be challenging us, something wonderful we want to share, she opened up that she had recently left a violent interpersonal relationship, and that this was her first public outing and event since she'd left that relationship. And that was what she shared on that day, because she said that she felt safe, that this would be a place where she could come, where she wouldn't be questioned, where she felt safe to be able to share that. And so it really showed to me that what we had created in this space has ripples that extend beyond the midwifery journey for many of these students. This was a place of community and of connection that was helping support them as women more broadly. Sorry, it's not playing. There we are. So the aim of our project was to explore the impact of support circles on student midwives' emotional wellbeing and sense of belonging to the midwifery profession. Compared to students who had not attended any circles, those that had reported greater compassion satisfaction, slightly higher self-efficacy, and in addition, their attendance improved students' sense of belonging to the midwifery profession and increased their wellbeing. The qualitative findings confirm these results and emphasise the value of peer support from students from multi-year levels. Their emotional well-being and sense of belonging to the midwifery profession are protective factors against the multitude and multifaceted stressors impacting student midwives. They're an opportunity for students to connect with themselves, with their peers, and the midwifery profession. We've got huge concerns in Australia, and I'm sure a lot of that is global, around our shortages in the midwifery workforce. And we have huge numbers of midwives that are leaving early on in their midwifery careers. And so where students are exposed to benefits of activities like Student Midwife Support Circles, they become more open to engaging in similar ways in their future midwifery practice. This concept is simple, it's easily replicable, and it's really resource efficient. It can be adapted and implemented across a variety of education and practice settings. And so this is a potential strategy to help support within that broader processes, ways to ensure that we have a strong, sustainable midwifery workforce. On behalf of myself and the other authors, we would like to express our gratitude to the women who have invested their time to participate into this research. We would like to acknowledge Judy Mort and Jane Hardwick-Collins for sharing the original concept and resources from which these circles have been adapted, and to Dr. Leanne Francia, who assisted with the initial data collection. And this project was internally funded by UniSC through a Spark grant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessie, for the nice presentation. This is so insightful for me because I also work in education of midwifery. So all the participants, there are feedback, love the feedback, love your graphic. And there is one question. Did you publish this research, Jessie?
So we've got a publication at the moment. We've just put in some response to reviewers. So we're hoping to have this published really shortly. We've got a second paper that we've written that talks a little bit more about this as being kind of ritual practice through midwifery education as a rite of passage that we're hoping to publish shortly as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So if you have question, you can raise your hand or you can type your question in chat box. So there is one question from Catherine. Catherine is my Master of Facilitator last year, and the question is, do you run a centering pregnancy group in any of the clinical practice in Australia? Similar concept with the addition of a structured learning element for the pregnant woman in the groups. So you can
Yes.
answer for the first question, Jessie.
Sure. Yes, Catherine, there are centering pregnancy groups that run in a variety of different ways here that I'm aware of. One of our local midwives working in private practice facilitates her antenatal care in that way. We did used to have a service operating out of the university here in conjunction with the Sunshine Coast Hospital and Health Service, where we used to do something a little bit different until they got their midwifery group practice up on board. So yeah, it's definitely something that's being used in this country.
Okay, is it clear, Catherine? Okay, so we can move to the second question, Jessie. I agree that SMSCs are highly valuable, especially in low resource contexts where the faculty to student ratio are suboptimal and could be a good bridge to learning and also provide the much needed support for midwifery student or clinical placement. Okay, Jessie.
Yeah, we haven't obviously looked at that in this context. This has been in addition to the clinical facilitation that has happened for our students. But during COVID, myself and Judy were running a lot of online, just free circles, and we had students, a lot of students from around the country that were just logging in to do that. So, having the option to facilitate these online is a slightly different space, but can be a really beautiful way to make this open and accessible to so many other people in different places. And, that's one of our biggest challenges, is really trying to get people together in the same place at the same time. So I hope that's helped.
Okay, so thank you so much, Jessie. So for the next question from Joanna Carter, how do you run up these circles? Just wondering how this impact attendance and the size of the groups, how you plan to staffing and facilitation?
Great question, Joanne. So the opt-in groups, there are a couple of circles that we have integrated into our curriculum. So I run a first-year Midwifery Foundations course, and our final tutorial is a circle, just to help give some exposure. We also facilitate one in O-Week, Orientation Week, when our students come. Attendance and the size of the group is something that fluctuates and differs over the years. I'm meeting with some of our Midwifery Society tonight to talk about, what they want to do moving forward, because attendance for us in the last 6 months have been quite low at these circles. In terms of staffing and facilitation, sustainability is a challenge there, with this in particular being a co-curricular activity. So this is a real love project for me. That's something that I'm really happy to facilitate in my own time, if need be. I guess the fact that I do it at uni just means if nobody comes, I just go back to work and do whatever else I catch up on that day. But yeah, I guess it's really been adaptive over the years based on what the student cohort are wanting. And so sometimes that is nighttime sessions that are offered once a month, or twice a semester is enough, or, based on current feedback, they were wanting them every fortnight, alternating during the day on different days, but that hasn't really worked. So I think it's just a constantly dynamic and evolving space that happens in collaboration with the students. But yeah, I was on maternity leave a couple of years ago, and we had a very engaged group of students, and the president of our Midwifery Society, I mentored her, and she was facilitating those sessions in my absence for part of that period of time.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your experience, Jessie. So this is there is one question from Indri. Sometimes we face the conflict in each student in one group. So for her question is, did those midwifery students ever experience any conflict, Jessie?
There hasn't been that experience in what I've seen. We often have differing perspectives and views, and we spend quite a bit of time at the start of each session, regardless of whether students have attended before or not, about what those expectations are. You know, we talk very explicitly that if someone is saying something that you triggers a strong emotional reaction in you, then that's something for you to look at. That's a part of something that you need to look at and explore a little bit more. So there's an opportunity for further self-reflection in that way. When students are talking, there's a lot of, in the circle, we have a talking bowl, and she who has the bowl is who has the opportunity to speak. So we have very clear expectations that she's not to be interrupted. It is our responsibility to just sit there and listen, for everybody to have their turn to speak. And then in that open discussion, we have disagreeing perspectives and points of view sometimes, but I would have never experienced that as conflict.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessie. So many questions because so interesting topic for us, and maybe that is the last question for us. And from Jennifer Phillips, thank you for doing this research, Jessie, and we hope we can combat the stressor in our student. Okay,
thank you all so much.
you so much. Okay, thank you so much, Jessie. So this is the reference from Jessie, and we have finished for the Q&A session. And